As a college junior, I've become accustomed to the usual school-related questions. So when I walk into church on a Sunday morning, I know that someone's going to ask me, "How's your course load for this semester?" Or, "Do you like your professors?" "What year are you again?" And so I give the typical answers of, "Oh, I'm taking a full course load, but it'll be okay. And I'm enjoying my classes so far. They're interesting. And I like my professors. It's good. And no, I'm not a senior. I'll be a junior, so I still have some time left." But the question that should be the easiest is often the hardest for me. People come up to me and say, "What's your major again?" And I go into my typical spiel of business administration with a concentration in marketing and interfaith leadership studies. And when I say that last part, people look at me and they go, "Interfaith leadership studies? What's that? What courses do you take? What do you do with a degree in interfaith? What are you going to do in your future?" And these are all great questions, but to be honest, I don't know what I'm going to do with a degree in interfaith. E-Town College is the only school in the country where you can get a bachelor's degree in interfaith leadership studies. So there isn't really this defined job market. There's not really a niche for interfaith. It's not like business or occupational therapy or engineering. And interfaith means something to everyone. You hear words like interfaith dialogue, interfaith action, interfaith education. It spans this broad spectrum, which is good, but you can get lost sometimes. So during my internship here at the church, which, if you don't know by now, is rooted in interfaith, I've reflected on the question of what is interfaith to me, and why do I care about it so much? Why am I devoting half of my college career to interfaith leadership studies? So when Greg told me that I would be preaching, I did what any sensible person would do, and I went straight to his office and say, "What do I preach about?" And he led me to this scripture, and I think it does a great justice to answering these questions on why interfaith matters to me and why we should care about interfaith. So from Matthew chapter 15, leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is a demon-possessed and suffering terribly." Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." The woman came and knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." "Yes, it is, Lord," she said. "Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus said to her, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." And her daughter was healed at that moment. So in this story, I see a very human Jesus. He enters not only an enemy land, Tyre and Sidon, in a land where Judaism is not the predominant religion. He is immediately greeted by a foreign woman of a land trying so desperately to get Jesus' attention. A woman who's trying to heal her daughter. And Jesus, he acts like maybe you or I would. He simply ignores her, acts like she isn't there. How many times have we been in a city walking along the street and someone asks for some change or for some food? I know that I usually just keep walking, acting like someone isn't there. So I guess it's okay with me that Jesus didn't answer her either. It makes me feel a little better about myself. But like most women I know, she is persistent and she keeps nagging. But Jesus, he doesn't respond to her. And at this point, the disciples cut in and they tell Jesus, "Send her away. We have enough to deal with as it is. We have the children of Israel, and they have a lot of problems. We don't need this crazy foreigner yelling at us, telling us, 'Help my daughter.'" And Jesus agrees. He states, "Yeah, we have a lot of problems. We have enough to deal with. How can we help this lady? We don't even know what she's talking about." But this woman, she is persistent. She carries on, and she continues to ask for help, even going as far to use the Hebrew vernacular, "Jesus, Son of David." But she isn't a Jew, so why is she using that language? Maybe she had just heard that a few days ago, Jesus fed 5,000 people with a can of tuna and some saltine crackers. She knew what the Son of David was capable of. So she thought, why aren't there crumbs for me? And Jesus, he responds with this talk of eating food from the children's table, and then he calls her a dog. Now, if I were that woman, I would be pretty peeved that someone compared me to a dog. But the woman, she takes it in stride and says, even the people that you may equate to dogs are worthy in the eyes of God. And at this point, I think something clicks in Jesus' head, and he realizes, this foreign woman, she may be from a different place, she may have a different tradition, a different religion, but she is just as faithful and as worthy as these Israelites. Some scholars may want to keep Jesus not as human, a little more divine, so they say, well, Jesus is just testing the faith of this woman. It culminates in Jesus saying, great is your faith, and then he heals the daughter. But there's no great confession of faith from this woman. She never converts to Judaism. The Canaanite woman knows who Jesus is, and she knows of his great works, feeding the 5,000 in Matthew 14. So shouldn't there be some leftovers from that meal? Shouldn't there be some crumbs from the master's table? The Canaanite woman teaches Jesus that faith can cross theological boundaries. Minister Barbara K. Lundblad of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America puts it very well. Jesus saw and heard a fuller revelation of God in the voice and in the face of the Canaanite woman. And I believe that this is where Jesus learns what it means to be an interfaith leader. He wasn't in Israel trying to convince everybody that he's the Messiah. He's in Tyre and Sidon, and he's talking to this non-Jewish woman. She's asking him to heal her daughter. And he obliges. He heals her daughter. So I ask you, who is the Canaanite woman today? When I was reading this story, I thought of it in modern perspective. Maybe this Canaanite woman is actually a refugee, a Muslim. And instead of having one sick child, she has several children who haven't eaten food in days and probably haven't gone to school in over a year. Now, maybe the disciples are just saying, Jesus, send her away. She might be a terrorist. She might be a crazy Muslim. So are we going to be like the terrorist? Or not the terrorist. I hope we don't be like terrorists. Are we going to be like the disciples? Or are we going to be like Jesus and realize that Islam is a peaceful religion? And this woman and her children have problems just like us, but in this case on an even grander scale. And that they remain steadfast in their faith just as we do. So when I was reflecting on what interfaith is to me, I saw it in this story, and it reminded me of my trip to Nigeria with the Take 10, Tell 10 trip. So when we arrived in Abuja on our first day, the first place that we went was Gerku Interfaith Camp, which is run by Marcus Gamache. This camp is made up of Christians and Muslims living together. And not only are they living in the same square footage, they're building a community and they're thriving. They have education, they worship together. They even have tractors now in agriculture, thanks to, I think, Pastor Pam. And they weren't brought together because they wanted to be there. They were brought together through religious violence, violence committed in the name of religion. But these people realized that at the core, their religions weren't all that different. And so when Pam returned from her Sabbath rest recently, I told her about this sermon that I was writing, about how, go figure, it's interfaith themed. And she said, well, I heard some good stories while I was over there. So the first one talks about, in the village of Biu, there are Christians and Muslims living together, but it's actually a Muslim majority. And yet these people remained united in their opposition against Boko Haram. On Fridays, the Christians escort the Muslims to their prayers, and on Sundays, the Muslims return the favor and escort the Christians to church. And these acts of solidarity have strengthened the bond of these people and really kept them safe from Boko Haram. At Mason Technical Institute in Garketa, which was started by Church of the Brethren, both Christians and Muslims learn together in the classroom. They take the same classes, they sit together, they eat lunch together. And when the Boko Haram came during one of their times of insurgency, the Muslims told the fighters that if you're going to burn down a religious center, it will be a mosque, because you're not going to burn down the church that our friends attend. And at that moment, the fighters left and they didn't burn anything that time. So they realized that if they worked together, if they formed a relationship and tried to respect one another, they could keep each other safe from the violence that has become such a normal thing in Nigeria. And to me, that's why interfaith is so important and necessary. If we build bridges of cooperation, understanding, and respect, we can create thriving communities with common ground of faith and spirituality. I think we're doing that here at Elizabethtown COB as well. Last fall, we had our interfaith dinner with the Islamic Community Center of Lancaster and the UCC Church here in E-Town. We sent letters of solidarity to the Islamic Society of Greater Harrisburg after they had received some hateful mail. We do have an upcoming visit to Shirai Shemayim Synagogue, which you should come to. And we have Dr. Jeff Long of Elizabethtown College coming to the New Discovery Sunday School class this fall to talk about Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Jainism. And I even sent out a survey on religious literacy and interfaith dialogue, which got a lot of feedback, I'm happy to say. So we do all of this because this is what Jesus calls us to do. Earlier in Matthew, he says, "In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets." It's the golden rule. So I wanted to dig a little deeper into this golden rule, and my research obviously included Wikipedia. And if you go to the golden rule page on Wikipedia, you will see similar passages from Islam, Baha'ism, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, Jainism, Confucianism, Taoism, Scientology, humanism, and there's a lot more, but I don't have fingers for that. So I think in this passage in Matthew, Jesus takes the golden rule a step further when he realizes the kingdom of God is more than just the children of Israel. It's the Canaanite woman and her sick daughter. It's the refugee trying to leave a war-torn land. It's the Christian and the Muslim Nigerians working together in cooperation so they can survive another day. It's every person of every race, gender, sexual orientation, political belief, all of it. Jesus learned what it meant to be an interfaith leader, and he challenges us to be the same. So the next time someone asks me why I study interfaith leadership, I'll tell them that it's because what I'm called to do as a Christian. When someone asks me why I care about interfaith leadership, I'll tell them because the alternative is frankly terrifying. I'd rather work towards celebrating our similarities than focusing on our differences. We have a lot of gifts to share with one another, and we can be better together.